you, feel free to take your camera off. But this is a very informal meeting, and nobody's trying to post this on Instagram or anything like that. So be comfortable. I do want to have you guys introduce each other. So the plan for today, the learning we're going to talk about is cleaning comb, preparing for spring, and rendering beeswax. These were sent out as a lesson that you could kind of do on your own, but some people like to kind of go over it together. So we're going to be talking about that. We'll finish up with kind of the doing of what's going on. Right now we're hive painting, lifting, and checking equipment. There's a yearly survey I'd love to get you guys to fill out. I just send it out every New Year's to just try to reset for the upcoming year and try to make improvements. And then, of course, Mead Fest. I feel like we've been talking about it for 6 months because we had to reschedule it, but we'll finish up with that because it is this month. So if I can pass it off to you guys for introductions. Who are you? And to share one thing you'd like to do better in 2022. This can be a beekeeping thing that you want to improve and do better, or just in regular life. So whoever wants to go first, go for it.
I'm the most senior of the bunch, I'm pretty sure. So I'm Dan Kell. I've known Laura for, I guess we're coming up on 2 years now in the spring. It's been a unique experience for me to get into the beekeeping business, and I'm just tickled to find out that an old dear friend of mine is also joining us, Ann Nolan from Fayetteville. I've known Ann most of her life, and when we lived up in Pearville in Northeast Arkansas, and gosh, I don't know what I guess the main thing is to make it through another year in reasonably good health that I've been able to enjoy the last several years. So like one of my old friends said, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of myself.
Thank you, Dan. I'm going to pass it off to you, Francesca.
Hi, I'm Francesca. My friends call me Fran. If you don't want to call me Francesca, because I know that's a mouthful. But I'm very new to beekeeping. I met Lauren like last year, actually. So, but we became friends like really fast. So, yeah, my goal for this year is just to build my beekeeping knowledge. There's still a lot that I want to learn, and yeah, hopefully this year I'll have my own hive to take care of. I guess that's the ultimate goal. So, yeah.
All right, we are the Perrys, Lewis and Barbara. We've had, I guess we had hives for 2, maybe 3 years, 2.5 years. And we're looking to learn more. We got dogs, cows, bees, chickens, and we're looking to learn more about our bees.
Did you all hear him okay? He's looking for, okay, all right.
Yeah, it was perfect.
And we just kick back out here on our farm, trying to grow a little bit more.
Thank you, Lewis. Take it over. Who wants to go next?
Well, I'll go. I'm Ann Noland, and I live in Fayetteville. And I just added chickens this year to my so-called farm. And I just am really anxious to learn about bees. I think it's important to learn something new. And so since chickens were last year, I started a large garden as well, and So I'd love to have the bees. I did take a class on the mason bees through the botanical gardens here in Fayetteville, and it was very interesting. But when I saw Lauren was going to start trying to move some hives this way, I jumped on it. So really excited and looking forward to spring. I'm already tired of winter, and I know we have several months to go, but hopefully in April, my bees will arrive in our backyard. So.
Hi, everybody. My name is Marthella.
Hello, my name is Annalise.
Hey, I'm Malachi.
We are No Closed Doors Youth Group, and we plan to do what was it? What we want to improve on? We want.
Yeah, what you want to do better in 2022?
Well, I want to do better outreach for the youth group. What you want to do better?
I want to do what's better for the youth group.
Malachi.
Help the community. Do better in helping the community.
And we've been working with Lauren not quite a year just yet. What about 6 months, Lauren?
Yeah, maybe going on 8, something like that, though.
We want to count better too. All right, thanks.
All right. Laura, you want to finish us off?
Okay, Lauren.
Hey, Kendra. I hear you in the background. Go for it, Laura.
Hi, yeah, I'm Laura Bertram. We started having, well, we had sort of a starter hive, well, no, an ender hive, I guess, last year, but we've had a real good experience with hives and reintroducing queens and reintroducing queens. But my husband took a video of our hive today, and they were going nuts. They were just crowding the door, trying to get in, trying to get out. They were so busy today. So we're so glad our bees came through that cold spell well, and I'm just loving getting to learn more. I guess the thing I'd like to do is retain more information about the bees this year. I try to take notes. It's hard though. I'm trying to listen and take notes. It's been a while since I've been in school, so but I'm loving learning about this. So thank you.
Thank you, Laura. That's a good reminder that I am trying to organize these kind of lessons, and feel free to give me any feedback along the way in multiple ways, right? So we have this kind of live back and forth where you can ask questions. I have been working on those handouts that I attached in the last email. That's more of like a front back PDF. So people who want to have paper versions, that's there. And then we'll obviously have the video afterwards where people can stop and rewind if they need to. But I'm always open-minded to different formats. So I am working on like a comprehensive workbook that I'm going to be finishing up later this month, early February. That'll kind of be all the lessons that we do throughout the 2 years that we work together to build up your confidence. And that way the hive, if you do want to maintain it on your own, after 2 years, you should be able to. And so that booklet, that kind of handout booklet would be something that you could reference anytime you needed to. So whether you print it out or you keep it on your phone, and trying to make it as user-friendly, almost like an app, as possible for you. But feel free to always, send me a message, send me an email if you have an idea of another way to share information. Because I know it takes time. Like, I've been doing this for going on 9 years, and I still learn new things all the time. So it's not like you're going to stop learning, but it's nice to be able to have documents or guides that are easy to reference. So all that to say, I'm coming at you a lot of different ways with information to try to just throw stuff on the wall and see what sticks. But feel free if there's something I should try out. So if there's any questions before we get started, feel free to jump in, or else we'll start with cleaning comb. All right. So this video that's going to play while I'm talking was literally me today. In our house right now, we are back to quarantining. Travis has COVID. And so because I've been exposed, I can't go anywhere either. And so it's just a great time to catch up on all these projects. So I have had these hives sitting out in the yard, needing to get scraped for about a month or two. So I'm getting started on that. And so in this video, the comb that I'm starting with is all gunky comb. Just like in the picture here, it's not comb that you would want to put back in your hive. And so what I'm doing is I'm just using my hive tool that all of you guys who've been to the hives are familiar with and just scraping that out. A lot of you guys who joined last year into our work days, you know kind of what this feels like to just be cleaning out that old comb. But I want to tell you guys the kind of the three groups that help organize your materials. So what I'm cleaning up above are the old frames. They need to be cleaned, but they're still good to use. The wood portion of the frame is still totally fine. There's no issues with it. It hasn't rotted or has any mold that's really damaged or have any other kind of issues. If the whole thing was damaged, you could just throw this in the bonfire and be done with it. But to be able to reuse these wooden parts year after year really helps keep your costs down, because just the wood part alone is about $2 a piece. And then eventually we'll put in some nice comb. These are broken up here in the bucket, but this nice comb is usually about another $1.50 or so. And we would put those in the frames once they're cleaned out. So if it has good foundation, like some of the frames I was pulling out today still had some really nice beeswax that was in the frame. And so I just left that alone. I need to protect it. And I'm going to talk in a minute about mothballs, but how to protect that comb that is really good. But you basically want to get everything down to bare frames. So that way, as we start having building parties in February and March, we'll have nice, clean frames to be able to start getting ready to put into the hive. And so I just want to point out lastly that I am putting all of the scraped wax into buckets that I can secure with a lid, because this beeswax, even if you don't want to do anything with it, a lot of people in the community would love to have access to beeswax. I know Marthella, she makes soaps that are really fantastic. And so we were just talking the other day that I can give her this batch that I'm making right here once I melt it down and process it, which we'll talk about. This beeswax is great for people who want to make lip balms or soaps or candles. So save the wax and just keep it safe in a bucket. Before I open it up for questions, I just wanted to talk about the mothballs for a second. So if you do have nice looking frames, which right here, these are nice looking frames. This is a picture of me putting them in the freezers, which I can do at the shop because we have the big, huge deep freezers where I can actually put full hives in there, which is great. But for most of us who are just using our home freezer, you're probably only going to be able to fit a couple frames inside. So the alternative method, if you can't put those nice frames in a freezer, is to put them all in the supers. So for you guys who aren't familiar, the super is like that green box. Let me go back to it. Like this box right here is a super, or the box that these are in right here. If you can fill those up with really nice frames, stack them on top of each other, and then put something on top and on bottom to seal it, so that way no mice or no insects can really get in. What I like to use are the top lids of the beehives. I'll put a top lid upside down on the bottom, and that creates a protection on the bottom. And I'll do the same thing on top. But once you've stacked up those hives, you go through and you just put a container of mothballs in every other box. and then it protects the frames. There might be some ants that get in there, but the really bad thing is to be able to get wax moths. We've talked about that in previous sessions, what wax moths, how they can destroy the comb. And so that's all you're wanting to do. If you have old frames, you don't really have to protect them. You just want to get them cleaned out eventually. If you have good frames, you do want to protect them either in the freezer or with mothballs. But basically, if it's a nasty old frame, you want to get it down to bare frames. So that way you can make it ready to go for spring. And we're going to talk more about that in 2 weeks, about how we actually take these bare frames and get them ready to go into the hive. But this is what winter is a lot of for beekeepers. It's just being able to organize your materials, clean up the old stuff, and get ready for new. So any questions on cleaning comb?
I have a question. When you get the combs, when they start turning dark, or like you said, they have, I guess is it mold or whatever it is on the old combs?
A lot of times it is. If it gets in this picture in the red bucket, you can see some really dark comb, like it's almost black. When it gets dark like that, the bees have used it time and time again, and it gets really brittle. And so it's not, there's buildup of toxins over time. It's building up any residues. And then it's also just not as malleable as being able to cap it and uncap it easily. So some beekeepers, they will continue to use it until it basically falls apart. I decide that once it looks significantly used, so maybe about 4 years old, then I clean it out.
Oh,
But if
okay,
I mean, sometimes, well, I was just going to ask, sometimes, go ahead, Louis.
I guess I'm asking about the wood part of the frame. Does the wood part of the frame get where you can't use it anymore?
If it's falling apart, that's the only time that I don't use it. Sometimes they'll get kind of wobbly and I'll add some nails into the center or like to each corner. One thing, if you do get wax moths in the frames, they have some kind of acid that they release and it actually deteriorates the wood. So every time there's a moth, there'll be these holes. And we all know with beetles, if you have any crevices or any holes, those beetles are going to love it. And so when it does get like that, either significantly moldy to where I don't think it's safe, even if I do a little bit of bleach, that I still don't think it's going to be safe, or if there's a whole lot of holes or little crevices that I know beetles are going to try to exploit.
Okay.
I've known some beekeepers that in Washington, we had a lot of mold issues, and they would boil their frames once they got them bare, like here in the video, they would boil them with lye water. But luckily, I haven't had any of that issues here. The only time I get them moldy is usually because the hive died and mold set in, or if I took the frames out of the hive and just set them in a garage, sometimes mold will take over then too.
Is there anything that you can store that you do decide to take some out and put them, like you said, put them in somewhere? And is there anything that you can store me? Anything you can put on them to keep them from molding?
If they're just like the shop there in Rose City, I just have them stacked up and they're not getting moldy. The only time they're going to get moldy is if you have dead bees in it. So if there's a bunch of dead carcasses in here, I'm not going to go put that in the shop and keep it right till spring and then put it in a hive, right? If there's a bunch of dead bees in here, I'm going to put that in my clean out pile and I'm going to get rid of that. So all those ones in the shop, they're not going to mold, right? Like honey doesn't mold. The only thing that's going to mold is if you've got like beetles in there that their larvae are maybe dying and growing, or leaving excrement all over it, or if you've got wax moths, that's generally where the mold's going to come from. These are moldy because it was a hive that died.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Lauren, when do you decide you need to clean them? I mean, do you take them out and see what all of them look like, or what's the problem?
Yeah. So these were, you remember earlier in the fall where we were taking boxes off because we wanted to condense them down? Whenever I went through hives and we were taking frames out, we were trying to take out the ones that looked either not used, that they were empty, or that they were just too gross and we didn't want them to sit in the hive all winter, just causing issues. And so that's where these came from.
Okay.
They were either hives that died off. I can't remember if I think there was one that had died. I don't remember what happened with that one, but a lot of times, and we'll do this in the spring too, after they've been in there all winter, in the spring, we'll take the whole hive apart and we'll check it before they start filling it all with honey and make sure that they have nice clean comb. And so that's why our goal, like we did last year, I think Dan, you came, I think this might even be you, when we did these build parties and we had a whole lot of these frames ready to go for spring. Like, this is beautiful, right? We want to keep those, but just anything that's looking gunky.
I think those were some I made, I'm pretty sure.
I have a question. So, and it's basically like, is there like a set number of times that you collect the honey off of the frames before you determine that, hey, okay, I'm going to, just like for general maintenance. So say, we harvest honey at least 2 or 3 times off of one frame. Would it be like, okay, can we just go ahead and be like, we'll just like clean it up, or you just play by ear?
I mean, I feel like there's no absolute right and wrong on this. There's not a set amount of times, because what's interesting is that the more times they put brood, like you can kind of tell in this one, the brood is always in the center of the frame and that honey will be on the outside. And so you can tell that they've had honey out here and it's a lot lighter, but the more they put brood, the darker and darker it gets. And so it's over the time of the brood. I would say, like in these pictures, these were all from our honey harvest. And you can tell that these are maybe a year or 2 old. But if we only put those at the top and they kept being just honey, just honey, just honey, you're going to get a lot more life out of them than the ones that are down with the brood. Because those, I mean, maybe even after a year or 2, if they're being used constantly to make brood, it's going to be used, and therefore a lot more toxins are going to get built up.
So it's mainly the brood frames that you keep an eye on that may develop all the toxicity of overuse.
Yep. And early in the spring, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take the bottom box and move it up top. And so when we do that, it'll be a perfect chance to glance in this bottom box, pull out any of the nasty frames, put on the good ones, and then move that up top. We'll start doing that in March, just doing a little swap, because right now they're all up in the top, eating that honey and using the heat. And so to help them out, to give them room for spring, we're going to take the bottom box and move it up. And during that transition, we'll check, because obviously in previous months, right, they were making their brood all down in here. And I know it's new terms for you. Brood means babies. They always put the babies down below and the honey up top. And so right now, because it's winter, all the bees are up here and they're not making any babies. They're not making any brood this time of year. And so whenever we transition that to the top, this will be where they start putting all the spring honey. So we want to make sure that those frames look good. All right. Keep the questions coming. This one is pretty simple right here. It's just a matter of numbers. So to start spring, we need to make sure we have 2 boxes ready to go for every hive. So, Annalise or Malachi, if you want to do the math, we have 44 hives and we need 2 boxes for every hive. So how many boxes do we need to have ready for spring? Right. So that's why we have work parties in February. Right now I've got about 30, 35 that are ready to go. But it would be nice to have these. We at least want to make 1 super or 1 box for every hive. So we're almost to that mark. But to start spring, it's really nice to have these ready to go because spring is crazy. And sometimes we'll add a box and then come back 3 weeks later and it's time to add another box. And Francesca knows with how many swarm calls we were getting last year, sometimes we would go through, I'd say 6 boxes in a day, just running around, putting boxes on hives and then catching bees out of trees. We can go through these boxes really quick. And then we want to maintain that supply. So even once the April, May crazy spring starts to calm down, we want to have half as many boxes as hives. So since we're going to be right around, 50 hives, we want to try to keep at least around 25 on hand. So that way we're prepared throughout the rest of the year. And again, all of those are either going to be in our freezer or they're going to have the mothballs. So that way we can go and grab them at any moment. Any questions on hive numbers?
How do you
I
know
have a question.
when you can?
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Lewis.
Go ahead.
I said, how do you know when you can? I mean, okay, we got 2 hives now, and how do you? I mean, do you extend your hive? Do you make more hives, or do you just say it 2 hives the whole time? 2 boxes.
Yep. So you have physically 2 hives, right? You have 2 queens on your property. You have 2 hives. Yep. 2 hives. So what I think you're asking is it going to be time for us to add a 3rd, or should we just add boxes? Is that what you're asking? It's kind of that.
Yeah, on a different part because we have 11 acres. Do we? Is it feasible, or can you add more hives at a different area on your property?
Yes. And I think your property with 11 acres, we could easily have, 10, maybe even 20. I wouldn't feel very comfortable with that because we'd start out competing other pollinators like butterflies. And we've talked about that, right? That when you have too many hives in a location, it makes things a little tricky because then you start out competing all these other pollinators. But you absolutely have the choice this spring. Do we want to grow the 2 hives you have? Meaning, do we want to add boxes to them? Or do we want to split them and make new hives? That'll be a choice you guys get to make. But the trade-off is if you split the hives, you're going to have to wait another year for the honey. But if you add boxes to the hive, you're going to get honey this year. So the hives generally take about a year to establish themselves and have enough honey to harvest. So in the spring, when your hive is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, you'll have to decide, do we want to just keep stacking it up and get all that honey? Or do you want to wait? You want to give it some more time, split it, because we could move it anywhere on the property. And then next year you'd get even more honey, but you'd have to wait.
Well, I think that's something we're going to have to look to you to do. I mean, I want to add something that's not going to make sense where we can't do it. And it's too much for you to be able to teach us more and more about this stuff.
My recommendation and what I've told other people, because some people are ready, when I come over, they're like, I want 15 hives out here, Lauren. And I cut them off at 4. 4 hives until you know what you're doing, and then you can build it up to 400 if you want to. But I feel like 4 is a fair number that you can still be learning the basics. But then as soon as I'm walking away and you and Janice and Robert are like, we're pros, we got this, we know, we're ready to take on kind of more ownership on our own, then you guys can start adding them up. But that's where, like Dan, you know, Dan's property is much different than yours. His is in a smaller backyard where 1 hive is more than enough for his space. So you're right, you have more space. So you guys get to make that choice this spring when we're working together on what you want to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's just,
And there's no right or wrong on it, Lewis. It's just a matter of what your goals are. Some people just want to have 1 hive because that's all they want to maintain, and they just want to get as much honey as they can. Some people want to be patient and build it up to be, you know, 5 or 10, and then start getting all that honey. So you get to choose. Francesca?
Oh, I was just gonna ask, like, about the materials, like for the boxes and the frames. Are we gonna be actually making those, or do we purchase wood or purchase the actual boxes?
So my answer is we buy them.
Okay.
Jimmy's answer is we make them. So I have been a part of many a teams, and granted, these were teams of high school students who were hell-bent determined that they were gonna, you know, design it in a 3D virtual thing, and then they're gonna print it out on the CNC with the laser engraver, and they're gonna get the dimensions perfect to where it acts exactly the same as the ones we buy, and it never works. And so Randy, you know, who lives at Jimmy's Rose City house, Randy swears he can do it, and he is like, I got this mold, I got these jigs, I got all these things, and I'm there to be the cheerleader. I'm there to get out my little hammer and try to put them together at the end. But I have been through this many a times, and I'm over it. And so I am all up for, like, we've done pallet bottoms. So we've made bottoms of the hive out of pallet wood. We've done pallet wood tops. And those have been usable. Those have been fine. But the idea of the box that has the handles that are, you know, engraved into it, and then these frames, the frames just have such tiny little detailing that what we generally do is we buy the tops, the bottoms, and the sides separately, and we'll hammer them all together to make the box. And then we use this wax foundation, and we do it by hand and embed it. So we're not buying like a ready-made kit. And I've had some people ask that of like, can you go to a bee store and just buy these ready to go? And when I ask the store owners, like, do you guys sell that? No one does, because it takes so much time that it would be very expensive, and they haven't found people want to pay that much money. So I found, and like how you did last year, Francesca, is we just had those build parties, and, you know, we had hand sanitizer and we had masks, and we tried to, you know, everybody brought their own hammer for a lot of them. And we just tried to have build parties that were a little bit more COVID safe.
Lauren, I'm sorry. Oh, I thought you were done. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just saying that. So that basically your answer is like it's a combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Marcella.
Well, my question was about the mothballs. So with storing the extra frames over the winter. So
Yep.
do the scent or the actual, you know, the scent of the mothballs, do they affect the bees in any kind of way?
Jimmy thought that too, because he was concerned last year whenever I started doing that at Rose City with all the things we were storing there. He was like, I don't know about this, Lauren. And I was like, I don't know either. This is what my dad does. And so I'm going to try it. Because I've put them in basements before, trying to keep them safe. I've put them in those like outdoor, we call it a can. What do you call those? Like the things that go on the back of semis and like we put on ships, those containers. I've tried to put them in anything to keep them safe, and the wax moths always get to them. They destroy it. You open it up and it's just like a cobweb of beeswax and it's all ruined, and it's gross. Anyways, this is the only thing I've found that keeps the moths away. And when we were running around doing swarms last year, and I would grab it right off of the mothballs and put it right on a hive, and the bees did fine with it. They took it right away. Usually, if you know what my car looks like, you know that I have a couple of these supers in the back of my car. I don't keep like the mothballs with them in there because they're protected in my car, and they're only going to be there for a couple days. But I do try to let the supers, the boxes, air out for a little while away from the mothballs before I put them on the hive. But I never noticed any problem, even if it was directly from the mothballs into the hive. So far, so good. All right, this is my last slide for tonight, and it's all pictures. I hope I will make them comprehensible. This right here is what I spent my day doing after I was outside scraping. So if you remember back from the earlier slide, I had 2 of these buckets. I filled this up, and Annalise got trained on this last year. I filled my big pot up with 1/3 of the way with water. I waited till the water got hot, till it was starting to bubble, but not to boil. You never want it to boil because you're going to start a beeswax fire in your house. But I filled the pot up 1/3 of the way. I put all of these scrapings that I got after it's all melted. And I have a dedicated spoon and a dedicated pot because it's very hard to get these things clean once they have beeswax on them. But once they're all the way melted, I pour them in a bucket overnight. And so this is the stage I'm at right now. When I'm pouring it into the bucket, I do go ahead and pour it through cheesecloth as well as a colander to get any of the wire or any of, if there's any carcasses or if there's, leaves at this point, anything that's large, it gets caught in the colander. Then I have the cheesecloth that gets any of the fine particles. And so tomorrow, whenever I open up the bucket, there's going to be a floating puck of beeswax. The water that I boiled the beeswax in separates just like oil and water. This beeswax is an oil, so it floats. What I'm able to do from it then, usually I'll do it a second time. So I'll melt this puck again in water, filter it out a second time. But once it's a good consistency like this one looks like, then I break it into pieces. Sometimes they're a little thinner pucks. This is the one I think Annalise and Marthella and I think Malachi was here that day. I think this is the big one that we did, where I said it was my biggest batch ever. I break it into pieces and then I melt it down and I use a simple mold to get the beeswax into a manageable size. If you ever try to buy beeswax, usually it just comes in something large, like a big puck like this. But since we're, doing lip balms or body butters, I try to make them smaller because it's a lot easier to measure for recipes. Any questions on rendering beeswax?
Is there a limit to like when you have like the cones and everything? Is there a time limit to storing those or keeping those to where it's like just not good to cook down for wax anymore?
I'd say watch the mold. Like today when I opened up one of the buckets, or I guess both of the buckets that I started with when I was outside. So when I had both of these buckets outside, they both already had some beeswax in it from previous times earlier in the fall when I did this. And I noticed that once I got deep into that bucket, it was moldy. And so I just threw it out. I had to call it, I didn't do it in time. So a lot of times it'll smell like fermentation because the honey, if there's any honey left, will be down in the bucket. And so it might smell like mead, might smell like alcohol, and that's fine. But if you find any mold, like substantial mold, not just a little bit, but like like it looks like a compost, it looks like it's all just fuzzy, then I just throw that out. Because nobody, I mean, whether we're making soap or especially lip balm, I don't even use the like any kind of beeswax that has like that looks really old. I try to separate out. That's why these actually look like two different colors. This is the beeswax that was really lightly colored, and then this was the beeswax that was darker. And as long as it doesn't have mold, I use the dark wax to make soap, because the lye in the soap will kill anything that would still be in there, any kind of like mold spores or anything like that. But then I only use the cappings from like when we harvest honey or from the foundation. Like you could see in this picture, this one had a whole lot of good foundation. Then that's what I would use for the lip balm. But yeah, just watch the mold. But if it's fermenting, it's fine. I've even had wax moths that got into the bucket. And so when we opened it up, you could see wax moth larvae like crawling around. And we just threw it in the pot. Like we just killed the larva in the boiling water. And then whenever we strained it out, we got all that out of the wax. But mold is something that you don't want to, that's no fun. Because I've even before, if it was moldy and I did go ahead through with it, I even got it into the mold and got them out and they looked all great. I put them in a Ziploc bag, and a couple months later I opened it up, and even the little beeswax had gotten moldy. So mold, you just don't want to mess with it. All right. I want to finish up by just reminding you what we're doing at the hives this month. So through January and February, the hives that had the least amount of honey, I'm going to go and visit first through January. And then hives that had a lot of honey, I'm saving till February. But you just want to lift the hive to check on how much honey is still in there. Make sure that it's still got some weight to it. It doesn't just feel like a feather that you could just tip over the whole hive. We're going to paint. So if any of the supers need a fresh coat of paint, it's a lot easier to paint the boxes that are on the hive during the cold, because generally the bees are less active than in the summer or the spring. So we want to try to paint them. Check for any rot or any damage. Sometimes a hive is going to need a new bottom or a new top. So we just want to check for that. And then obviously we just want to make sure that the hive is alive. And I put obviously that we don't want to open the hive. You just want to listen. You want to knock and listen for life. But if you have to, like sometimes we think that a hive is dead. I was over at Heifer downtown the other day, and they did have 2 dead hives. And so we knocked, we listened, we didn't hear anything. We just peeked inside the lid to just see if we saw any life, and we didn't. And so then we took the whole hive apart to make sure. And I didn't actually put it on here, but if you are on social media at all, one of the heifer hives, we actually found the queen. I'll try here in a second to show you guys, but the whole hive was dead, all scattered bees all throughout, and the queen was barely crawling around. So we saved her, and we just added her to another hive. So, you know, obviously she's going to die, or the other queen's going to die, because only one queen can live. But at least it was a shot at life, because without her hive, she was obviously going to perish. So we don't want to open the hive, but if it is a dead hive, you do want to go ahead and harvest any of the honey and then protect those frames, just like we were talking about before. So we've got them with mothballs. We've got them in the freezer. Any questions
Okay,
about
Lauren.
that? Yep.
Yes, I have a question. With this winter being so we've not had a bad winter this year.
Mm-hmm.
How does that affect the life of the bees, or what they're gonna do through this winter and then into the spring?
So you point out something important. So when we have mild winters like this, they fly a lot more, and therefore they eat a lot more honey. When we have really cold winters, the bees are used to just piling on top of each other and keeping each other warm. It's called clustering. But when it's warm like this, they're not clustering. They're in the hive moving around. They're going out and or they're trying to pollinate, but there's no flowers. And so they're going to go through their honey a lot faster. So if we need to, Lewis, we'll put the feeder on the hive, the sugar water, to give them more food to make it through until spring.
Okay. Okay.
But yep, that is important because we have had such a mild winter. That cold snap the other day, this is a picture that one of our hive hosts sent me. And she was worried the hive was dead, but she went over and she did a knock. She heard them buzzing inside and she sent me this picture. And I was telling her that this is actually a good sign because this means that there's bees that did die in that cold snap. When they're clustering together, just like penguins, often a lot of the ones on the outside will die when it's that cold. But what this means is that the bees that survived are cleaning those dead bees out. And so because you see them piled up here right at the entrance, that means that there are bees alive in there and that they're cleaning out any of the deceased bees. So this is actually
we saw bees today around, because it got up to 60 degrees out here.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw some bees and wasps around out here. Is that a good sign? Is that not a good sign?
Well, it's good that there's bees, but wasps are hungry this time of year, so they're trying to eat the bees. So if we start seeing bee carcasses, or if there ends up, being some way for the wasps to sneak inside the hive, the wasps are trying to eat them and they're trying to protect. So let me know if you have any like decapitated bees or any bee carcasses that look like they've been eaten. So these froze. They're still all the way together. They got a head, they got their thorax and abdomen. But if you see bees that are like ripped apart, like something's eating them, then that means we have a pest we need to deal with.
Okay.
All right. To finish up, Mead Fest is this month. So Whitewater Tavern is going to host us. And all of the donations, all of the funds from this event are going to go towards pollinator habitat builds through the spring. And this is actually from Anne's house the other day. I asked her if I could take some pictures when I was checking out her property. And this is exactly what we're looking to build in the spring. So we want to do some like youth programming, either with you, Marthella, or some other groups around, whoever's interested, as well as for some adults. We've gotten a lot of donated bamboo. And so we want to do some build days. These are for mason bees and for native bees. So Saturday, the 22nd at 2 p.m., whether you just come and, pay a $5 entry fee to just listen and learn about how to make honey wine, that money will go towards these habitat builds. But then if you actually want to come and make mead, we'll have all the kits and materials for that using our honey. And that'll all go to do some of these build days in the spring. And with that, I just want to end you guys with our yearly reflection. This survey was sent out as a link in your emails, but this you can just type right in to the web browser, bit.ly/Calm+Confidence or CC yearly reflection. And it's just a really quick survey that helps us kind of guide things through 2022. So I guess we started with 2022 theme and we're ending with it, as well as this beautiful picture of Francesca pondering life. So
I can't believe you put me out there like that.
The classic photo. This is a swarm from last spring. We were trying to figure out, we're like, how are we going to get it into the box? But we got it. Way to go, Francesca. Like a pro.
Actually, I don't have that picture. Will you send it to me?
I will.
Okay, thanks.
All right. I'm opening up to Q&A, but if anybody needs to leave, I totally understand. But if you can do this survey, I would love it. You could literally type it in right now on your cell phone, or check back in your email and click the link, whatever is easier for you. But thank you, Anne, for joining us. And I'm happy to see so many people on here. And I'm going to be honest about 2022 getting people on here more. So thank you for making the first meeting. And I'm going to keep the reminders coming. All right. Bye, Anne. Any
Thank
questions?
you, Lauren. Thank you for giving us some of your time away from nursing. We appreciate you a whole lot.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marthella. Appreciate you bringing the whole team.
Hey, Lauren, I've got a question that has anything to do with the beat, but I've noticed the light on mine. It's been kind of strobing in and out. Does anybody else see that? It's like the light, it gets brighter and then it goes down. I can't figure out why it would do that because I've got one of these halo lights up here and it's staying on all the time. Of course,
I've noticed that on my laptop at times too.
One thing I can see, Dan, when I go to my settings, so like those 3 dots next to the hang up, if you click on those 3 dots and then you click settings, under video, there's something that says adjust video lighting. And so it's like an automatic, it's kind of like a focusing thing. So I don't know if that's on or off maybe for you, but maybe it's doing some kind of like auto adjustment.
It looks like it's on.
It's on?
Maybe. Oh, it's on.
Yeah, maybe that's
now.
what it is.
Maybe that'll fix it.
Yeah.
I'll try that.
Janice and Lewis, I'm happy you guys joined. And Lewis, I'm happy you asked so many questions. It's good to see you on here. And I hope you keep bringing them. I'm excited to see you guys gain that confidence so that your 11 acres, you guys can spread them all out.
And
I'm going to spread them as you see fit. I mean, I don't want to go into this stuff not knowing and not getting the information from you that we need to get so we can make our bees, our form more vibrant.
And it is good to have like a set number that's kind of a goal. Like I've been working with Heifer downtown and their goal is to have 10 hives because just for grant writing and stuff like that, it's just an easy, solid number. And so for you guys, I think, you know, if we do decide to get up to 4 this year, I'd say let it sit there for a couple years while you get the swing of things and you make sure that you're feeling good about those 4. But then the more confident, especially if Robert's into it or if you get into it, your property could hold at least a dozen. So when and if, because it is a lot of materials. And so that's where you need to have those extra boxes ready to go, you know, either a deep freeze or some way that you can keep them safe over the winter. So it's kind of you can start slow and build up over time. But I appreciate you taking the time because there's some people who I'm working with who, if I let them, they'd have 20 hives on their property, you know, just starting out. And so I think it's good that you're taking it slow and learning about it.
But you learn from the best.
I don't know about that, but we're all learning. Yep.
Okay.
All right.
One more question, Laura. How do I put my name down at the bottom of the box?
Your name is down at the bottom of the box.
It is there?
That's how Ann knew it was you. It says Dan Kell.
Okay.
You're good.
Because in mine it says you.
Yeah.
I thought that's what it said in everybody.
What does mine say?
Yours says Lauren Anderson.
Okay. Oh, yeah, because mine says you.
I was wondering about that too.
You guys all have your full names except Francesca is Fran the Bee, which is very appropriate.
That's my last name, so I can do that.
Well, I was tickled to see Ann. I can't believe how small a world this is.
That's craziness for you two to both be on here.
It is. I can't wait to go back and tell Pam that I talked to her a while ago. So.
All right. Well, I'm going to kick us off here. We're in and right at time. If any of you guys have any questions for me, feel free to email or text me. But I'll see you in the next sometime in January or February to check hives.
Okay. Are we gonna have another bill session sometime?
February. So the next time we get on this call in 2 weeks, I'll have the dates to share.
Okay. Everybody have a good week.
Bye, Laura.
Bye.
Bye, Perry.
Bye-bye.
See y'all.